So this is part two of our She-Hulk photo manipulation walkthrough. And just for the sake of time, I've actually done a little bit of work on this. So what I've done is I've gotten her to the point that if you watch my Add Amazing Detail tutorial, it will get you to this point right here with this coloring and nice dodge and burn look. And so if you want to go ahead and follow along with that tutorial, I just didn't want to add that here for the sake of time, and you'll get this effect. Now the other thing I've done is added her clothes here, her top and her bottom. And I've done that using just a black and white adjustment layer. And what I've done is I've just added that adjustment layer, added a mask, made sure it was a black mask, and then anywhere I wanted clothes, I could just paint with white and create that clothing. So just as a quick tutorial, I'll say, well, let's see if I wanted to say connect to the top and bottom here. Then I could just go, let's make sure my brush is where it should be, make sure it's hard. And then I can just paint in something like this if I wanted to add, you know, that as part of her clothes. So it's just a matter of adding in what you want. And then the other important thing of this is if you double click here, it's going to bring up your layer styles. And I've gone to Bevel Emboss, and I've added that embossing to give this more of a 3D look. And here's the settings are inner bevel, the depth of about 150, the size of 16. I've got just a light gray for the highlights, black for the shadowy area, and I don't know if you can see too dramatically what that does here. Let me zoom in and see if I can show you what that does. See how that just creates that 3D look. It makes it look like those clothes are actually on her rather than just her body being painted black. Okay, so pretty easy to do. And I have some other tutorials that go into more depth on how to do that. So we're going to do some fun things here with Liquify. And in order to morph her into looking more like She-Hulk. So I'm going to click on my She-Hulk layer, and I'm going to go up here to filter and make sure it's a smart object. So just hit convert to smart objects if your image isn't a smart object yet. And again, this is a 1/6 scale TB League model, and I've gotten the boots, the holster, the guns off of eBay. Okay, so we're going to go up to filter, Liquify. And the first thing I'm going to do is just do some adjustments on her face to make her look a little more fierce. So I'm going to put more of a frown on her face. And then I'm going to tilt her eyes inward. That just gives a more like angry look. And then just to intensify her eyes, I'm going to bring all of these settings up to about 30. You don't want to go too dramatic with them or they start to look fake. But that's kind of the look we've given her now. Just a little more personality, a little more like kind of look to her. Okay, so now what we want to do is bulk her up. And we're going to use the bloat tool to do that. And all I'm going to do is click on section of her body to start to bulk her up. And I'll show you what I mean here. So I'm just going to start clicking and notice how that starts to increase that. And that will push in the opposite direction of where the majority of the circle is. So if you want to go to the left, you want most of the circle to the right and the other way around. So they'll do the same thing over here. Gonna make this a little smaller. Gonna pump up those trapezoid muscles, I think is what they're called. Just kind of do this slowly, give her some amazing biceps here. And I'm just clicking, click, click, click. Click, click, here, click. And just keeping that in the direction. I'll add a little more tricep bulk here. Fill in a little more, and then we'll go back to her shoulders. Beef up those shoulders a little more. Beef up these traps a bit more. I don't want to do too much with her lower arms. Okay, and then I'm going to come in here to her chest area and bulk that up. And then we're going to move down to her legs, and I'm going to bulk up her thighs. And just click, 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 click. Do a little bit on the inside. I don't like to do a lot because it can make them look more like they're fat than muscular. But here, do some more on the back or on the outside. And then I'm going to make this a little smaller. And I'm just going to concentrate on this muscle right here, just to enhance this muscle here, make it look a little more dramatic. Just make the inside of her leg muscle just more enhanced. Okay, now let's do a preview. And if we don't like it, we can always come back and adjust it. But I think that looks pretty good. I want just kind of a mix between keeping her, somewhat feminine, but still giving it so that she looks like she's a really nasty person to have to deal with here. And so there you go. You see that effect of her. And that's really cool. And if I needed to adjust the clothing, I could either subtract or add a little bit, but it actually looks like the clothing's still fitting really, really well. So the other thing that I did is, this is the green color that I've wanted her to be. And so I just came down here, selected solid color. This is the color that I picked for her to be, 637F0D. And then I just masked, everything away that we didn't want to be green. and then came in here like I did with the car in part 1 of this, and just erased away the green, which looks like I could still do a little more work with here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now I'm going to just debating whether I want to create a stamp or no, I don't want to create a stamp. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call this model. And you can add stuff to a group like this, and see that's just all of her. Add it to a folder, and then if you come up here and convert that folder over to a smart image, it now allows me to be able to come back into all of those layers and make adjustments. But I can treat this also as a single layer to add like filters to and that type of thing if I want those effects to be more global. Okay, so now we're going to go back to where we left off with our part 2 with our car part here in this alleyway, and we're going to bring her over in front of the car here. So I'm going to do that by dragging this layer up to here. And putting her there. Now let's make her a bit bigger. Okay, now I want to do the same with her that I've done with the car and the background, and that's where I'm going to add again a color lookup and use the moonlight to do that. Make sure it's a clipping mask. Again, I'm hitting Alt and click here. Then I'm going to reduce that pretty little bit more dramatically down to about 50%. Now what I'd also want to do is make it look like she's got, you know, headlights shining dramatically through her leg area here. And so what I'm going to do that is I'm going to come onto this layer mask. I'm going to make sure it's black. I have black color. I want to do really soft, a really soft, or really low opacity. Make that pretty big, and just kind of paint here just to give that effect of those lights showing through. And then what I also want to do to kind of enhance that effect is I've double clicked on the layer, brought up the layer styles. Now I just want to do an inner shadow, and I want to make this more of a yellowish to match more of the car. Almost probably a yellowish green just to match with the coloring overall. And we'll make that just be 90 degrees. And then we can just adjust how we like the opacity here, something like that. Adjust the size. Overall, I think I kind of like just where that was. Hit OK. And that adds to that. I may just darken her up just a titch more by increasing that mask or that opacity a little bit. Now let's add some shadows here. So I'm going to come underneath her. I'm going to add a layer. I'm going to call that shadow. I'm going to hit D to convert these back to black and white. And those are pretty much where I want them to be for now. And then I'm just going to create some shadows that are just kind of like the headlights would be kind of pushing her feet and legs a little bit, shadow away from her like this. Doesn't need to be too dramatic of a shadow or too fancy of a shadow. Okay, now just to add a little more drama, I'm going to come on this layer and I'm just going to add some sparks. So this is just some sparks. You should be able to find something similar to this pretty easily. Just add a little more drama to the picture and go to screen mode. And then I'm going to create a copy of that. Hit Control T. Bring that over to the other side. And click that. And that kind of adds just a fun effect. Should have done this a long time ago. Let me just clip the bottom of this. Well, no, it will take a while. Let me not do that for now. And then the last thing we're going to do before we add just maybe some final polishing touches is just to add on top of everything just this fog layer. And there's YouTube videos on how to create clouds or fog. There's a ton of them out there, and I just built this using one of those, or you could just find an image. And then I'm just going to begin with my brush, be in black, make it have fairly low opacity, and then going to add a mask. And then I'm just going to start masking it away. Obviously, I want her to be pretty much fog free. We could leave some of her boots more foggy. Just kind of lessen the fog on that car. I don't want it to hide all of those lighting effects that we worked so hard to get in there, but this just adds a little more drama to the picture. Something like that. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Just to add a little more mystery and drama to the picture. So that basically completes this tutorial. And at this point, it's kind of where I kind of just play with the photo. A lot of times I'll go into Camera Effects Pro or into Camera Raw, play with blending modes and color correction, and do some things like that. And so before I do that, I just like to create a stamp. So I'm just going to combine this all into one image. I like to work non-destructively as much as possible, but at this point, nothing I add cannot be easily re-added if I want to go back and make some changes. So in this case, and let's make sure we set this to be a Smart Filter. I'm going to go to Camera Raw Filter. And I just want to add a bit of color grading to make this a little more green, just because this is the overall look of the image is. And I'll tell you a trick that I do that may or may not be helpful to you. But what I do is I usually set my shadows and highlights where I like them. And then I run my midtones so that they're halfway between wherever these end up. So in this case, it's kind of that look right there. And see how that just has added that little bit of green and colors everything to look like it all fits better as a unit. Okay, so this is pretty much done. I would be happy with leaving it at this point. But what I usually do is I go into the Nik Collection Color Effects Pro and play with some of their filters to see what they look like. So I'm going to do that now. I'm going to go to Filter, Color Effects Pro. And there's one in particular that I think might look pretty cool. I'm in the recipe section, and I'm going to go down here and do this one called Super Punch. And I use this one quite a bit because it just does what it says. It just adds a lot of detail and drama to the picture. And I really like that. Let me just go double check another one. For detail, that kind of does something similar, but I don't like that. On the dark side, I use fairly often. And that one might not be too bad, especially if I just lower the opacity on it. But I'm going to go ahead and go up here to Super Punch. Select that. I'm going to hit OK. And even this, I'm not going to use the full effect. I'm going to drop it just a little bit. So I can come here. This is a smart object. I can click over here. And this will allow me to lower the opacity or effect of this layer. And I'm just going to drop that down to about 80%, see what that looks like. And yeah, I'm real happy overall with the way that looks. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned a few things that you might be able to use in your future projects, and I really appreciate you watching. Thanks and goodbye.